Welcome to the Construction Marketers Podcast, where we teach you how to create the best content in construction. I'm your host, Jonathan Core, and today we're chatting with Liberty Kogan. Liberty is the founder of Liberty Kogan Social Marketing, a social marketing company working with concrete and construction companies. Welcome to the pod, Liberty.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for having me. Wow, I sound so official with that title.
Yeah, for sure. Before we go into this conversation, I want to start off by unpacking a little bit more about why I'm having you, Liberty, on the podcast, because some of you may be thinking, Jonathan, don't you have the same type of company that Liberty does? Why would you invite your competitor on here? Here's why. Here's why I invited Liberty. One, there's enough business out there to go around for everybody. Like there's only so many businesses I can work with. Obviously, it's probably the same thing for Liberty. And so in my opinion, I feel like making alliances is actually probably a lot better in the long run. The second piece is Liberty has been extremely friendly and approachable. So like she'll comment, on my content, support a lot of content, which we're going to unpack here shortly. And in my opinion, I feel like, because I am connected with other agency owners on LinkedIn, in the similar industry, and not all of them are friendly, and I'm not saying that they're not friendly people. They just haven't engaged the same way Liberty has from that standpoint. And then the third piece, though, is I want to learn what's working from another marketer in the industry. I only see things from Jonathan's point of view, which sometimes is very tunnel vision, like and I struggle with pride, and so that doesn't help. And so this is definitely a good opportunity for me to be able to learn more and just kind of see what Liberty's experiencing. So with that said, I'm just curious to hear your thoughts, Liberty, just on that, like just whether it's the view on being a potential competitor and things like that, just overall, just initial response to that.
Oh, yeah. Well, while yes, I do possibly see us as competitors, I also kind of don't. And for the same reasons that you pointed out, there's the amount of construction businesses out there that aren't even most of them aren't on LinkedIn. Let's just be honest. A lot of them are, and that number is growing every day. But like everything from a small mom and pop construction business, that's maybe 10 to 20 employees, to, a big nationwide general contractor, they're all out there, and there's tons of them. So, and a lot of my focus, I'm based in the Southeast. Like you said, I'm based in Alabama. And a lot of my business is local to me. Now, not actually local. I do work remotely for all of my clients, but I work primarily with companies that are in the Southeast. I have one client that's out west, but it's a little bit of a different type of industry, if you will. It's in construction, but it's just a little bit different. So yeah, I don't see us as competitors. And listen, LinkedIn is all about those relationships. You know that better than anybody, right? So I don't see any harm in engaging with your quote unquote competitors. If anything, I just see it naturally expanding your network to, not my network and your network, to people that you never even dreamed of, that maybe aren't your next client, but that can lead you to the next opportunity, can lead you to a bigger, another, what's the word I'm looking for? Like another opportunity to like showcase yourself or showcase your own agency. So I don't really look at it that way. And I say, the more friends you can make on LinkedIn, the more success that you'll have.
Yeah, for sure. And for those of you that lurk on my content or Liberties, and you're an agency owner, or you also do the similar service or vertical aspects of the services, things like that, reach out. Like we don't bite. If anything, we want to be able to grow and network, growing, like just sharing industry insights. And honestly, I feel like that's a lot of the conversation we'll have today. So with the topic, or kind of staying on the marketing agency piece, I want to start off by reading a post I recently made on LinkedIn that you responded to, and it actually had to do with marketing agencies. And I'll read the post, I'll read your response, which is really funny, and then we can kind of pick it up from there, and then go from there. So the post reads as follows: if I told you to do something that I wasn't doing, would you do it? Probably not. Yet, most marketing agencies say, invest in marketing. You're going to be irrelevant without marketing. Your construction company needs more marketing. But here's the thing. You would see them run if you were to ask them this one question: are you investing in your own marketing? And if you want to make them cringe even more, ask them this: what results are you getting from your own marketing? You see, most marketing agencies are really good at sales, but suck at their own marketing, which seems weird to me. So a few years ago, I decided to get good at my own marketing to prove that it actually works. And I'm here to report back that it does. I've gotten more brand awareness for my company because of the content. I've landed a ton of new clients because of my content, and I've grown my network in construction because of my content. So when I encourage contractors to invest in marketing, it's not to make my pocket bigger, but it's to help make theirs bigger. But remember to ask this question the next time a marketing agency reaches out to you: are you investing in your own marketing? And listen to the reasons why they aren't, because most aren't. So that was my post. And then Liberty comments a few minutes after that and says, now, why you got to call me out like that? And then kind of just left. No emojis, no nothing. And so I'll read into it as satire, because I know that Liberty does create her own content, like different, different, and even too on different platforms. I know that, Instagram is one of the main platforms that you create a ton of content for. But I'm just curious on your thoughts on this, because I have noticed this from a marketing agency standpoint, that there are, and this isn't strictly focused on like even construction. I've seen tech companies, e-commerce, like all these agencies do incredible marketing for their companies, but really suck at doing their own. And so my opinion, outside of your funny response, anything else that you'd like to add or chime in?
I agree with you 100%. Yeah, I often feel the major imposter syndrome when I'm talking to my clients about, like, you need to get in front of the camera more, you need to show more faces, whether it's your face or employees within your company. If you don't feel comfortable with that, with you being that person, and I don't always do that for myself. In fact, I more often don't do that for myself. And there are several reasons as to why I don't do as much as I should. Now, these are all going to sound like excuses. Not going to lie. Number one is sometimes there's literally not enough hours in the day, in the sense that, my clients come first. We have deadlines to meet. I have, things that I've, guaranteed them of, what I'm going to do for them that need to go up on a daily basis, Monday through Friday. I have 2 little kids. So from the time I drop off my youngest one at school at about 8:30 in the morning, and then it's about a 30-minute drive back home, from about 9 a.m. till my oldest one gets home at 3 a.m. That's like really all I have. And it sounds like a long time, like 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, right? That's 6 hours. But when I factor in all of the work that I need to do for my clients, as well as just normal human things that I need to do for myself, whether it's, having to run a few errands that I can't do with the kids. If I want to go to the gym a couple times a week to take care of both my mental and my physical health, again, I should be doing that more often, but here we are doing my best. And then just the off chance that one of my kids' schools is going to call and say, hey, blah, blah, blah is sick. We need you to come get them. And the rest of the day is gone. So yes, that does sound like an excuse. I'm not going to lie about that, but that's just kind of the reality of my life. But I'm always constantly coming up with marketing ideas for myself, and I'm not executing on them. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I will, I'll set up my phone with my little ring light and I'll get some funny videos made, or I'll get, really good thought leadership posts thrown up on LinkedIn. But I would certainly like to do more. So I've thought about outsourcing some of those things to, just like my clients do, outsourcing some of those things to other people that my content is their top priority. So listen, I have these great ideas. I don't have time to execute on them, or I don't really know the best way to execute on it for myself. And another thing that I struggle with too is I'm always so afraid as coming off, especially on somewhere on LinkedIn, as like desperate or needy or like self-serving with my content. And so that's really hard to do. I'm always working to try to find that balance of how can I share parts of my life that are personal, educational things as well that can, help my network on LinkedIn, and do it in a way that's not like, oh, well, Liberty is just fishing for compliments. So I struggle a lot with that as well. And that prevents me a lot of the time from posting my own content. I'll get too much in my head and I'll worry about it too much. I'm just like, oh, never mind. Delete. delete, delete, delete. So yeah, that's kind of how it goes for me. But I do realize that I need to do a better job of marketing myself and my business. And maybe the way to do that is by outsourcing that to other people, whether it's through ghostwriters, or I do have a video editor that I work with, that I'm thinking of sending him some of my clips of work that I've done for my clients. And I'm going to have him turn it into like a badass B-roll video. So that's something I definitely am going to do. But yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
where I stand with it.
Yeah, if anything, I feel like these first few minutes into this conversation should be like confessions of a marketing agency owner, because there's definitely, it's not an easy thing to do, considering, like you mentioned, you're working with different clients, and then there's different goals, different objectives, different strategies, all sorts of, because it's obviously all tailored and unique for each contractor. And the thing for those of you that don't have a marketing agency, some of you may be thinking, wait, why would Liberty outsource this if she's doing this herself? The thing I want to add for you guys is that company marketing, brand marketing, is very different from personal brand marketing. It's a very different animal. I've partnered with a few individuals in the past to be able to help kind of with strategy, as well as ghostwrite some content for them. And I'll tell you firsthand, it's a very different approach, and it's a completely different part of marketing. And you think of marketing, even in general, like when you say social media, you think it's one specific thing. There's so many sub segments within, a social media. So that's the thing I want to be able to kind of dispel, just for any listeners that are like, hey, Liberty, like, like, no, this is a very different approach here. But the other thing, though, I want to encourage you, Liberty, is actually the one thing is encouragement, and one's a question. So one of them is, I think, honestly, like, even if you just pick up your phone and just record yourself and literally just share like a quick little thought, and then just upload that with a one-liner, I feel like that is a lower barrier to entry to create consistent content. And I say that because normally at lunchtime, I'll take a quick walk, like a 30-minute walk, just to get away from my computer. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, man, I'm walking right now. What if I, on my walk, what if I just pulled out my phone and shared a quick little, or just documented something, just a thought I had? I think there's definitely a lot of, room for that. Cause I know that production value, all that sort of stuff. Sometimes, even as creatives, we kind of bog ourselves down, or like kind of create their own bottleneck. It's like, well, it needs to be this. And I'm like, yeah, it does. But what's the like lowest barrier to entry that gets you creating content consistently? Because I think in general, and I've said this in the past, production value doesn't actually equal great content. No, great content starts with what you're talking about, your point of view, all this sort of thing, and then production value helps enhance that. However, if you have a really, like right now, we were talking kind of about my setup, my camera setup. If I had this whole setup, but I didn't know anything I was talking about, or like if I was sharing very bland or fluffy type of content, that wouldn't, the production value wouldn't, overshadow that. People are like, okay, this isn't helpful, this isn't interesting content. So that's the first thing I want to say from an encouragement standpoint. But the other thing, though, is I'm just curious. You mentioned you have different ideas, working with clients, and I'm sure even too outside of the time slot you have for working with clients. Do you have any content ideas now that you're sitting on that you're like, man, like this is something I want to talk about that maybe you've been sitting on a little bit?
I mean, I just always get funny ideas. So I spend a lot of my time doing research, AKA just like scrolling Instagram reels and just like laughing, It's like my source of entertainment. But I love seeing like funny reels, and I'm like, I could do that. And I could probably do that way better too. Just trying to amp myself up a little bit.
Yep.
But funny ideas are always there for me. And I also struggle too. So I do have clients. Most of my clients, yes, are in the construction space. I do have a few that are not in the construction space at all. And I don't necessarily always want to pigeonhole myself to just construction clients, only because, listen, like if someone calls and they want to pay me some money to do their marketing and they're selling, hot dogs, yeah, girl, I'll do it. No problem. So I'm always afraid of pigeonholing myself. So I try to keep my ideas not so construction specific all the time. However, on like LinkedIn, most of my network are people within the construction industry, in all different aspects of it. So my content there that is geared toward construction does tend to do better. But yeah, so it's mostly just like funny things that'll make people laugh. Cause if it's something that's going to make me laugh, I always think like, that's probably going to make someone else laugh too. So I definitely, I go towards that more lighthearted, funny content just naturally. But I also want to point out when you were talking earlier about just taking a walk and like having those ideas and just like filming yourself to get something off of, out of your head and into a video. I got to shout out Jesse Hernandez here on this podcast, who I'm sure you follow on LinkedIn. His title is he's a construction mind shifter, and he and I have had a few conversations. But what I want to point out is that like I love, first of all, he's putting out a crap ton of content all the time, which I'm like, get it, dude. Like I don't know how you do it, but he'll be like in his workout clothes, like all sweaty, like on his like morning walk or whatever, and he'll film this like great video, and it's maybe only 30 seconds to like 90 seconds long, but it's real and it's raw and it's just his phone, but you see like this beautiful, nature behind him, whatever it is. But he's a great example of creating content quickly and creating content that doesn't necessarily have that high production quality, but has a lot of value. So it's either teaching you something or it's making you laugh or whatever it is. So I just got to shout him out. So if you're not following Jesse Hernandez on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, he's everywhere. Go do that, because I wish I had that level of just go for it that he does. I'm trying to get there.
Yeah, for sure. No, Jesse's awesome, and it's funny because I've connected him in a workshop thing that I did maybe over a year ago, and that's how he got on my radar, and I've been following him since. And Jesse, if you ever watch this, I just want you to know that my favorite part of all your videos is how your sign off. You'll say whatever you'll plug your thing, say contact me, whatever, and then you always end the call by going peace. I don't know why. Like for me, that's just so I just look forward to that part of the video for whatever reason. So it's like those little elements. But no, Jesse's a great example of just kind of creating content as it comes. And one of the things that was really interesting. So I asked my wife. I said, "What's your favorite social media platform?" She's like, "Instagram." I'm like, "Okay." So talk me through. When you click Instagram, what do you do? She's like, "Oh, I go through all the stories." And so she goes all through all the stories. I'm like, "Do you go through any posts?" She's like, "Not really." And then she says that, but the follow up though after that, she says, "The reason I don't go through like scrolling through posts because there's a lot of ads." And so kind of going back to what you're saying as far as kind of the low production value, and maybe from marketing speak, that's how we would call it, low production value. But in my opinion, I feel like, especially you have the example of stories. The reason why, in my opinion, that resonates is because it's real, it's raw. You're like it's like you get like what you see is what you get versus everybody's polished like Instagram grid or things like that like they're still like other aspects that are maybe more polished. In general, I feel like as human beings, we kind of like being a fly in the wall. Be like, okay, what is Liberty really like? When she's not creating a funny video or a part of different projects or doing our own thing. And I think, in my opinion, the more and more you lean into kind of that real and raw content and just sharing just things that are just come up to your mind and distributing, that actually probably has potential to perform better than the high production value content.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So I always tell either my clients or potential clients, I'm like, your story content, especially on Instagram is also my favorite platform personally. Your story content is just as, if not more important than your feed content. Because like you said, your wife, prime example, a lot of people now, they only check the stories. They don't do any scrolling like that anymore. And if they do, they're not necessarily doing it on their home feed. They're doing it on just, the Reels feed, which is people that they're not following, but content that Instagram, thinks is going to appeal to them.
Yep.
But yeah, stories are, especially if you're like a one-man band, if you're like a real estate agent or you're just like a solopreneur or a business owner, that is your opportunity to like really be vulnerable, really take people behind the scenes, even if it's just like feeding your cat, like something boring and stupid like that. But you have all these opportunities on story to engage one-on-one with people. Now, granted, your story is only going to be seen by your followers. It's only going to pop up on their home feed if they're actually following you. But at the same time, if it's someone that's not following you and they go to your Instagram profile and they see that your story is lit up, they're probably going to watch it because it's like, it's like, ooh, it's only there for 24 hours. What are they doing? I must know. So yes, you're appealing to your followers, but also non-followers. But in my opinion, people are much more likely to engage with your story content than they are your feed content.
Mhm.
Because if I'm watching someone either like cooking something on their story, or they're making a joke about some hilarious parenting fail that they had, whatever it was, I'm most likely going to tap that message bar at the bottom and like send them a little note. Not necessarily buying something from them. It's probably just like a friend of mine, but I'm going to be like, oh my God, that happened to me the other day too. Or, oh girl, watch out. Blah, blah, blah. But it's just a faster and easier way for people to engage with you without it being like public, like a comment below a post.
Yep.
And then using all of those tools that Instagram gives you, all those engagement tools within story, the polls, the questions, the add your own photo, whatever it is, the more you use those, the more people are going to engage, and the more people Instagram will deliver your stories to as well, because Instagram loves that you're using their little engagement tools. And one last thing on that, like I only have on my personal Instagram, I have like 650 followers. It's not that great. I was more in like the Facebook generation where like I had like 2,000 Facebook friends, thought I was the shiz. I'm not a Gen Zer. Wish I was, mainly just saying wish I was younger. But anyway, what I'm saying is that because I don't have a huge following on Instagram, but I'll still get like over 100 views on my story, which statistically, if I only have like 650 followers, it's not even six, it's like 615. What am I talking about? And I have like 120 story viewers. Percentage wise, that's pretty high. So that means people are liking seeing my story content. They go on there to, see what weird things are going on with my kids or my house or my cat or whatever it is. I like to share, very behind the scenes fun stuff there. So, but yes, to your point, stories are extremely important and should not be ignored. And if someone says to you, what is an Instagram story? Please fill them in immediately because they need to know.
Or not.
Or not. Let's protect the world from your lack of knowledge, please.
There you go.
I know. I was talking to someone recently, or they were like, "What is the difference between a story and a post?" And I was like, "Oh no, oh no." But listen, some people don't know, so we have to educate them. Yep. So I need to be better about not judging people for their lack of knowledge. I need to come at it at a more, graceful approach and help people.
Yeah. So while Liberty helps and isn't judging, I'll be judging and unhelpful. So to continue on the conversation. So if you go on Liberty's LinkedIn page and you scroll down her work experience and you just scroll all the way down, if you look at her experience, she's been in theater for years now, in different states, different, and has been in that, and I'm sure is still involved in a certain extent with the industry. But my question for you is, how do you go from theater and like dance and all that sort of stuff to social media construction, like how does one do that?
Well, listen, the main answer is that you got to pay the bills. Okay. That is, anyone that is in the arts in any capacity knows that. I mean, you're a musician. The arts you get into the arts for the passion of it, right? You don't necessarily get into it for the money. It's a tough business, whether you're a musician, whether you're a performer, a dancer, a recording artist, whatever it is. So let's see. So I majored in musical theater. I did it all growing up. Went to a performing arts high school, majored in musical theater in college, got a BFA in musical theater. Immediately moved to New York City. I had an agent, was auditioning constantly, got cast in a national tour, Legally Blonde, the musical, if anyone is familiar with it. Super fun, actually. Did that show for 7 months, came back to New York, auditioned again for the next about year and a half. Still I bounced around to a couple different agencies during that time. And, but it was really hard. I mean, it was really effing hard. I didn't have any family there. I'm originally from Atlanta. So my family was in Atlanta. My boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, was in Atlanta. And, in that industry, when you're pounding the pavement and people are telling you no, basically every day, literally every day, it's really tough.
Mhm.
And so one day in April of 2012, I get a call from my agent out of the blue. I was actually walking into a babysitting job. I was babysitting, just to make money. And he called to tell me that they were dropping me from the agency. And
Mm,
I was like, oh, okay. Didn't see it coming, to be perfectly honest.
man.
But the first thought that I had when I hung up the phone was like, okay, good. I can leave now.
Wow.
Which I was like, probably should listen to that voice. It was, like I said, it was hard. I think I was probably very depressed. I would call my family
Mhm.
crying all the time. Not cute, not a vibe. So literally a week later, left NYC, moved back home to Atlanta. And I was like, so what now? What am I going to do now? Because I was very, I want to say, probably bitter and jaded
Mm,
about theater at the time. I had just been knocked down so many times, and I didn't even know if I wanted to do it anymore. I was like, well, maybe I'm not any good. I don't know. Like the
mm,
world's telling me that you kind of suck. So moved back to Atlanta, didn't know what I was going to do, but I had worked for a babysitting agency in New York City. So I was a babysitter for them. I went to all different families, all different jobs. Really loved it. And so I asked my boss at the time, and I was like, well, what if we open up a branch here in Atlanta? And she was like, maybe. She's like, I'll pay you like a tiny little bit of money and you can like try it out and see how it goes. Because I had a lot of connections in Atlanta. I was from there. I knew lots of moms. I wasn't a mom then at the time, but I knew lots of moms. Uh, so I started that. So I slowly built that up over a process of over a period of like 3.5 years, and basically built like this Atlanta branch of this babysitting agency into like this huge thing. I was having like 20 babysitters working like a day,
wow.
going all over the city. They were, girls that were in college, college graduates, like young professionals, mostly women, not gonna
Mhm.
lie. And it was great. And I loved it. And then in 2015, my then boyfriend and now husband and I moved to Nashville for his job. And I was still running the Atlanta branch from there. And then a couple months after that, my that same woman that had me open the Atlanta branch was just like, nah, it's not really working anymore. It was working, but for some reason she just thought it wasn't. So I left that job. Again, another crossroads of, okay, well, what now? Had to pull that really entrepreneurial spirit. Also, while I was living in Atlanta and running the babysitting agency, I was performing a lot as well. I was working in a lot of theaters there, having an absolute blast. Um, so that was really amazing. So I got a lot of, more theater experience under my belt, but I really just got to do it for fun
Mhm.
rather than it being like my complete livelihood. So not as much pressure. So yeah, I moved to Nashville and I started working for a company that they said that they wanted to be the Netflix of dance, meaning that they wanted to have just all dance programming on like a subscription service like Netflix, but like,
Mm.
movies like Step Up and, Magic Mike, all kinds of dance movies like that. Magic Mike has, lots of different genres that we could put Magic Mike into, but dance is one of them for sure. Um, so they were a brand new company in Nashville. I knew someone that worked there at the time, and I was like, "Listen, dude, I know a lot about dance. I don't really know a lot about like tech or streaming or anything like that, but I know a lot about dance. So can you help me get my foot in the door?" He helped me get my foot in the door, and I became an executive assistant to their CEO, which was great. A couple weeks later, the CEO got fired, along with several other people, by the owner of the company. And they were like, Liberty, do you know like anything about social media? And mind you, this is back in 2016, where yes, social media obviously did exist, but it was vastly different than it is now.
Oh yeah.
Um, but I started running their social media pages, and it was really, really fun. And I was pretty good at it. So I was doing that. And then at the beginning of 2017, so my parents worked for a concrete company that was based in Atlanta. And I knew they'd both been there a very long time. So I knew a lot of the people that they worked with. I knew like the president and the vice president, because it was like a family owned business that grew into this big thing. And I knew that they had social media pages, obviously, but no one was running them. They had a few pictures up here and there. And so I met with the president at the time, and I was like, you should hire me to do your social media. Like, you guys are in Atlanta, but I'm in Nashville. They had tons of jobs in Nashville at the time. So it wasn't like that strange of a choice. But yeah, so he was like, yeah, sure, you can do it. So I started running, their Facebook, their Instagram, their LinkedIn. And that was kind of like, that was my first, construction social media job. But I was doing it concurrently with the social media job for the dance streaming service. Just kind of in my off time, AKA while I was at work all day long. So don't tell anybody. So yeah, I started doing their social. And then once I kind of promoted on LinkedIn that I was doing that, not promoted, just like had it listed on my profile, it just kind of snowballed into other clients. So like a company from Memphis reached out to me, a concrete company, and they were like, hey, I see what you're doing for this company. Could you do that for me too? And I was like, yeah, I don't see why not. Sure. So it really was just like kind of a snowball effect. And I kind of found a niche within social media for construction businesses. And the power of LinkedIn just led me to more and more clients, more and more contacts. And it brought me to where I am today. So I had quit the job at the dance streaming company. I had my first daughter. I was just solely working from home. I only had a few clients. But I decided that I didn't really want to go back to a 9-to-5 job. And yeah, just made this like my full-time thing. But I love, it's a strange transition from musical theater. But as you know better than anyone, social media is, I don't think there's anything much more creative than social media, because you are constantly having to put on your creative thinking cap and put out creative content, whether it's writing, whether it's video, whatever it is. It's all about creativity. So I get to be creative in different ways every single day. I'm not saying that it's easy every single day. It's definitely not easy every single day. But for me, it was kind of a good transition. And I had always enjoyed writing, was a pretty good writer. So it just kind of fit for me. Sorry, that was a really long story, but here we are.
My first response.
You're like, oh, wow, Libs, thanks.
No, well, my pause and response will make more sense. Okay. I feel tired for you just knowing what you'd gone through, just from the dance and school and, living the dream and then having the dream shattered, having to go reinvent yourself multiple times, just different things just thrown. And honestly, that's life. But just from another creative to another creative, it's just like, no, it is tough. Like, especially especially from a, something you love to do from an art perspective, through dance and theater. But I think the asterisk though that makes it tough is the performance part. Is you have to be really well. You have to be, and so sometimes the lines between what you do and your identity are very blurred. It's very blurred, and so it's easy to take things really personally. And it's really cool to hear that you were able to at least eventually go back into the dance, theater world in Atlanta. And you'd mentioned like, hey, this is just for fun. This is just like a creative outlet for you to express yourself. And I could definitely relate with that as a musician as well, because I was a full-time music director and had been a part of different bands, all sorts of stuff, trying to make money. And literally the same thought is like, I got married and I'm like, okay, I needed to start actually making money to support my family. But it's crazy because now anytime I do any projects or things like that, or even with my band, it's all stuff that we want to do. There's no like we need to make X amount of followers or revenue. It's not, this is just the music we want to be able to create with no strings attached. And I think in general, as a creative, as an artist, you in general that's the space you want to get into, but that doesn't always pay the bills. It's what ends up paying the bills for us would be records, singles, EPs, all that sort of stuff, touring. And so, so I can definitely relate from that standpoint. So hearing your story definitely just reminded me a lot of my own. But one of the things though I want to say is even too, for me transitioning full-time musician into the kind of business world, construction marketing world, I eventually became like an in-house marketer for a contractor for a few years. And so my question for you, you had kind of alluded to it already. You said, hey, like you left the dance Netflix job. You don't want to be in a 9 to 5. But I'm curious though, now having the experience that you do, obviously you're working with clients and you've already have an established business, but did you ever consider or think about, even being like an in-house marketing person for a contractor or some sort of company? Like, has that ever like been an option or a thought for you?
It never really was an option for me just because of kind of like the personal things that happened in my life. So, you know, I was working at the dance job in Nashville for the entirety of, 2016. At the beginning of 2017 is when I became pregnant with my first daughter. And that's when I also started working for the concrete company as well. So it was like, great, I can get this extra income that we're going to need come the end of this year when my daughter's born. Um, and I mean, this wasn't a big company. They didn't have like, oh, here's, all this maternity leave and here's all these resources for you. Like, you can come back when, I mean, this is just, not to get all, feminist on you, but, just women in general in the workforce in the US. It's not easy being a mom and having little kids and trying to figure out how you're going to run your professional life and your mom life and make sure that your kids are taken care of and blah, blah, blah. That's another conversation for another time. But I didn't have those resources to have like full-time care for my 3-month-old baby and go back to my 9 to 5. So basically I was kind of forced to quit.
Hmm.
So that was at the beginning of 2018. And then right after I left that job, my husband got his professor job at University of Alabama. So we were moving to Tuscaloosa. I mean, I've driven through Alabama. I had never really been there. We don't know anyone here. We don't have any family here. So we came to basically a strange place, not knowing anyone. I was just working for the concrete company, making a little bit of money. Um, and that's when, again, that snowball effect slowly started to happen, kind of at the end of 2018. But yeah, so I never really had the option of going back to a full-time job because I have this baby
Hmm.
now. I don't have the means to put her in full-time daycare. Not that I would want to. So it makes more sense for me to stay home with her and kind of do like side hustles,
Hmm.
even though that eventually became my full-time job. So yeah, so that's kind of how it went. So then the side hustles just continued to grow. Luckily, I'm extremely grateful for that. And I was able to stay home with my daughter, stay home all through COVID because she didn't start going to school until she was 3.5. So once she turned 3.5 and was going to school part time, that gave me the ability to kind of take on more clients. Like, oh, you have some hours during the day where you can completely focus and kind of grow your business. And yeah, so personally, it just never worked out to go back to a 9 to 5. But now I would definitely never go back to a 9 to 5 unless I absolutely had to.
Yeah, no, that's super insightful. And just for you listening out there, because I do want to kind of spend the latter half of this kind of going into tactical strategy, all that sort of stuff into social media. But I appreciate you sharing your story. And the thing I was going to say to the listeners though is if you guys want to hear more about just Liberty's journey, like she's an open book on both LinkedIn and Instagram. She'll share aspects of being a business owner, being a mom, just in general. I feel like it's very refreshing because you definitely add a very human aspect to what you're building and what you're doing, which I think is important. A lot of times, especially Instagram, like we just like to show the highlight reels and what's going, the great parts of our life. But I think a lot more we crave like real and authentic and kind of more the harder stories or hard aspects of life. Because in general, I feel like sometimes as humans, we're like, okay, am I the only crazy person here? Like, is it just me or and no, and the answer is not. And so if you want to follow her, on LinkedIn or Instagram, definitely do that because she's very open about that. So to kind of gear the conversation now towards more tactical aspects of marketing, social media, construction, um, I want to start off with this first question, and we can kind of, unpack it from here. But the first question is, what are some of the biggest mistakes that contractors make on social media?
Oh gosh, like Contractors that are not clients of mine. Is that what you mean? Just like in general?
in general?
Well, number one, not being there. That's the main one. Or thinking that a certain platform may not be right for you. And I'm not saying that every platform is right for every construction company, but I feel like if you can maybe do a little bit of testing and find a way like, oh, I didn't think that video content was going to work for us, but video content like totally works for us. So we should start putting these videos on TikTok or Instagram or whatever it is. So being open to, number one, being on social media and being open to other platforms that you thought may not be right for you. Now, I'm not saying you need to go hog on every single platform. You need to create an account on every platform and like be posting constantly on all of them. That's not what I'm saying at all. But just be open to what it is and try to put aside your preconceived notions. Like, oh, that's for like the cool people or the cool companies. And I'm like, well, first of all, who said you're not cool? Like, we can be cool. We can figure it out. And cool is different for everyone. So yeah, putting aside your preconceived notions. Other mistakes that they make is they'll literally post like once every 6 months. It's like, no, like you're an active, like these are active companies. It's not like the company went under. So if you see that they haven't made a post in like, I mean, in this day and age, I say if they haven't made a post in over a month, like we need to address that. But if they haven't made a post in like 6 months and it was just like some weird, random, blurry photo that like, I don't even know what I'm looking at, that's a problem. So lack of consistency on social media. Again, finding the balance of what consistency works for you. It's different for everybody, depending on your bandwidth and et cetera. So those are the two glaring things for me. And then also another mistake that I see is they will put up maybe a great video or a great photo. It'll either have no caption at all, or it'll have a caption that has like it. I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know what I'm seeing. There's like a ton of grammatical errors in it. Now, I'm not saying I'm a stickler for grammar. Social media is becoming much more lax with that. But if I can't like even read it, like, no, like it's got to go. So those are the biggest things that I see. And yeah, those are the three main ones.
It's interesting that the grammar piece, not to rabbit trail too much, but there's this marketer that actually messes around with like misspellings and things like that on purpose. And so for example, he'll literally be like, like there's a post that I don't remember how he described it, but he said something along the lines of like, he quoted somebody. He said, okay, this is a quote from Steve Jobs, but it was actually Bill Gates. And so, or he'll misspell Google and just go Gogle, or things like that. And the reason he does that is because people will go in the comments to be like, "Hey, you misspelled this," or "Hey, that wasn't blah blah." And so, in general, then the algorithm's like, "Oh shoot, people are engaging with this. Let's boost this." And so, that's just a little quick kind of growth hack from that standpoint. Like, just kind of, I don't know. So sometimes if it's intentional for growth hacks, awesome. But so I assume in this case, it actually probably wasn't intentional that they did that.
No. And listen, I'm all about like especially on LinkedIn and especially in construction, like a lot of people, including me, we want to see that like raw boots on the ground, like 5 a.m. pour with the sun coming up in the background and the guys are all dirty. And, there's nothing wrong with that type of content, but you just need to structure it and post it in such a way that it's going to either perform better or it's going to create the engagement that you want. Because if you put up that video probably with no caption, I don't think it's going to get a lot of engagement in the comments. But if you put up like, oh man, this was a tough one. This and this went wrong, but then these guys showed up and like saved the day, whatever it is, tell a story with it. But if you're just putting it up with no context, I don't think it's going to have the impact that you want it to have. So providing some kind of context for the photo or the video and telling some kind of story with it. Again, this doesn't need to be like a novel, but a couple sentences will do the job. Yeah, that's a big mistake that I see contractors make on social media, not just on not just on LinkedIn. I was going to say on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Yeah. So like you'd mentioned, obviously you have your own Instagram, you have your own LinkedIn. I'm sure you're on other platforms, but you're seeing content from other contractors as well as clients. You're creating content for clients, and so you have a good like understanding as far as content performance and content engagement, all that sort of stuff is concerned. So I'm just curious, from what you've seen or experienced, what type of content have you seen perform the best on social media for construction?
Oh gosh. I would say things that take us more behind the scenes,
Mm.
that show, the actual people that work there, the people of the company, who is making the magic happen every day, and not going for that virality or for that, that instant gratification of like, whoa, man, we got like 10,000 views on that video. That was awesome. Like, yeah, that's fun every once in a while. Of course, who doesn't love that? But it's about brand building. It's about showcasing who is behind the company, who really works there, who is dedicated to the company's success. How did they get there? How did they get their company to to where they are now? Who helped them along the way? What industries did they come from before? Like with me, for example, you pointed out I came from musical theater. Like that's kind of weird and kooky, but it gives me a great story to tell. So I want to hear those stories. And so I feel like that kind of, I don't want to say off the wall, but something that's a little bit more like, oh, I didn't think they'd make a video about that, but that's really cool to know. I didn't even know that about them. I feel like that content performs the best because it's not necessarily going to go viral, but I think it's going to get the most engagement. And I think it's going to show people another side to your business that they didn't expect. And sometimes they're like, oh, I like that. That's cool and interesting. So that's my favorite type of content too.
Something that's really interesting is, people, I'm sure ask you a lot of questions. They'll ask me a lot of questions. Hey, what content performs well? All that sort of stuff. My general, like I definitely have a framework or at least an understanding of what content could potentially perform well, but there's no absolute, like, this is going to work for you. And I say that because
Right.
obviously I work with different contractors too. And, some content types or things like that may work really well for one contractor, may kind of fall flat for another. And obviously there's so many parameters and reasons why that may or may not work. But the reason I bring this up is I recently explored something that is really interesting, and it definitely, I want to get your take on it here on a post I'm going to read that you've responded to in the past as well. But
Mm.
it's around virality, like going viral. And so
Mm.
the recent experiences, I have a client that I'm working with, and we wanted to do a big push on like promoting the trades and all that sort of stuff, especially with the labor shortage, all that sort of stuff, be able to be
Yeah.
proactive from a social media standpoint. And so what I ended up doing was, and I'm sure that you could definitely try this out. Anybody who's listening can go try this out. I ended up going to find a known figure that a lot of people know, which is Mike Rowe. And I found a clip, I think it was on YouTube, of him talking about the trades and all that sort of stuff, talking about college. And so
Mhm.
what I ended up doing was, downloading that video, whatever. And then I created a post kind of narrative, like, the company's point of view on, college isn't the only answer. I have this whole copywriting thing kind of breaking that down. And then you have the video. And so I upload it on LinkedIn. We have LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. And so, it performs normal on Instagram and LinkedIn, but it blows up on Facebook. And for me, that was the first time I'm like, what? Like, how did, and so, cause
What?
cause I've never had a post go this viral, especially for a client account. But and the caveat here to note though, for those of you, maybe the more technical side is Facebook, we did Facebook Reels, not Facebook
Yeah.
posts,
Yeah.
because if it's on a
Mhm.
post, it's only limited to your audience versus if it's in a reel, it'll be distributed potentially to new audiences. So
Right.
as of, I think it was this morning or yesterday, I checked it again because we still get comments on that post that we made maybe a month and a half ago. It has like 36,000 likes, over maybe 1,300 comments, and like, you know,
Wow.
maybe 26,000 reshares or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, I'm just like
26,000 reshares?
something like that. Like it's astronomical. Like for me, it
Wow.
blows
That's
my
amazing.
mind. And like, Yeah, because I think at one point I remember seeing that there was more reshares of the post than there were like likes. So
Yeah.
it definitely, but eventually the likes did pass it, and so it's crazy to see that happen. And for me, I'm like, I could definitely see how, whether you're creating content for the first time or have created content in general, the viral kind of dopamine hit, it definitely hits. It
Oh
definitely
yeah, it feels great. I'm not denying that at all.
but the reality is, in my opinion, I feel like I definitely have my own point of view on viral posts. And so I want to read this post to you again. I know you've seen it already, and then I definitely want to be able to talk about just viral content, your perspective on it, as well as whether you've
Yeah.
experienced it, yourself, whether it's your own content or clients' content. But I'll start off by reading it. So every contractor needs to hear this. Going viral on social media doesn't pay the bills. I recently saw a contractor post a marketing position that went like this: are you looking to help a company go viral? We're a painting company that is looking to be the top company in the area. Here's why I believe this strategy will fail. Viral content usually consists of one, reposting funny, general, non business related memes that went viral for other pages or people, two, reposting videos that went viral for other pages or people, three, reposting feel good stories that went viral for other pages and people. And then most of the time, viral content isn't original content. Don't believe me? Look at some of the biggest creators here on LinkedIn. And I said biggest creators because a lot of times they end up resharing, feel good stories or things like that just to be able to get the
Yeah, yeah,
exposure.
yeah.
And then I say, don't believe me? Yeah, yeah. So look at some of the biggest creators on LinkedIn. Yes, it works to get attention, but it doesn't work if you're trying to build your business. How do I know this? A few years ago, I was posting content that was getting between 5 to 10 likes per post, but the same content led to sales conversations that eventually turned into actual business. And keep in mind that they never engaged with my content either, but they did see it. It
Right.
resonated with them and motivated them to reach out. So instead of focusing on creating content to go viral, do this. Focus your time and effort on educating, adding value, and helping your audience through your social media content. Even if you get between 5 to 10 likes per post, this strategy has a better chance of helping you pay the bills than going viral ever will.
Yep.
Value over viral. So I'm curious your
Yeah.
thoughts, just general perspective on viral content, and even maybe you've had conversations with contractors who want to go viral. Just, yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts there.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've heard it many times before where, they want like the cool TikTok videos. Okay, like why? Like so that you like look cool on TikTok, so that you have like thousands of followers on TikTok. Okay, so say you do have thousands of followers on TikTok, Instagram, even LinkedIn, whatever it is. Do you have 10,000 customers on LinkedIn as well? Because if so, like, first of all, way to go. But that's usually not the case. And I know that a lot of marketers like to throw around the term. I mean, I use it as well. Vanity metrics.
Hmm.
I even had someone say to me once a few years ago, like, can't we like buy followers from like Russia? And I was like, oh my God. I was like, sure. If you want to go pay some, I don't even know what those companies are, pay some company to buy you bot followers so that you look like, so that you have lots of followers, sure, go for it. But the greatest test, if you see a company on LinkedIn, or I'm sorry, on Instagram, if they say they have like, if it's showing that they have like, I would say 10,000 followers for easy math. And if you go on their latest post, which is a photo, a reel, regardless of what it is, if they have 10,000 followers and their last post got 5 likes, what does that tell you? Like statistically, it should be way more. That means most of the time that they bought those followers so
Yeah.
that they could have those vanity metrics to show, hey, look how many followers we have on social media. So I always urge against doing any kind of bot following or buying followers. Again, I don't even know how to do that. So I always urge way against that. But yeah, the virality, like if you have that every once in a while, great. But it's not necessarily going to bring customers into the door. It may again get you a lot of reshares on social media, but as far as like actual phone calls that come in. I don't think anyone's going to be like, oh my God, I saw this viral video of you guys doing this on the tractor and it was so awesome. And I'm ready for you to like do my landscaping now. Like, let's do it. Like, no, they're probably live across the country and are not even a viable customer. So definitely you can't go by virality, but you do want to go, instead of virality, you want to go by engagement. So you want to see like, are people commenting on it? Are people asking questions about it? Are the people that are liking the content people that could be potential customers of yours, or that are somewhat in your industry that could, their like will lead you to, to the potential customers through, LinkedIn or just however the networking algorithm works. So that's what I'm looking for. And that's what I always recommend to current and potential clients.
So I have a lot more questions. I'm going to ask one before we wrap up this conversation today. It's super insightful. I want to ask you, from a contractor's perspective, what are the wrong questions to ask as it relates to social media? So like, for example, people ask, hey, how many likes will this get? What's how many follow? Like, what are some of those questions that you hear that really just like you're smiling externally, but inside you're just like, dude, wrong question to ask. Like I'm curious what some of those are for you.
Why didn't this post go viral? That's a big one. I don't know. I don't know. That's the main answer. But again, is that virality going to get you the answers that you want or like solve all your problems? No, it's probably not. That's a big one. Or another one is just like comparing. It's like, oh, can we do videos like that? Oh, I want to do a video like that. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not even like that kind of business. Like that doesn't really make sense for you. So going with those questions, I had another one in my head and I just forgot it. Oh yeah. Like why didn't this get more likes, or why didn't this get us more followers? And you said it earlier, just because someone didn't click like or comment on it doesn't mean they didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
I have had multiple times on LinkedIn through the years where I've had either like leads that turn into clients or just like potential leads, or people in the industry that reached out to me on LinkedIn that have never engaged with any of my content ever. I've never even seen their name pop up. I've never ever heard of their company, but they're like, oh, hey, I really like what you're doing here on social media. Or on LinkedIn. I'd love to chat more about like what you do and how you do it. And they probably have seen my content, but they never engaged with it. Obviously, They just said that they saw it. So you can't go by just those numbers, which I know that can sound frustrating to a business owner that, is looking to pay the bills. But you just have to, again, you have to have faith, I want to say, in like the system. Know that whoever is doing your social media hopefully knows what they're doing, knows, all those things that I just said. And is it true to you? Is it authentic to you? And is it meaningful to you? Because if so, it probably is going to be all of those things to your viewers as well. So while it can be frustrating, you have to also have faith in the system in some way. And that's the, that's the devil of social media. It's like, we're always looking for the numbers. It's a numbers game, but it's not always a numbers game. And it's hard to see that sometimes, but that's how I look at it.
And in my opinion, I think social media is not a numbers game. I think it's a content game. I think it's whatever's the most engaging, entertaining, inspiring, educational, like whatever, like if it fits those buckets, that content will perform well, regardless of if you're a business or personal brand. And I think the two backups for that is, I was listening to Mr. Beast on the Lex Friedman podcast, maybe about a year ago, or whenever he did his little podcast tour. And Lex had asked him saying, hey, so how do you look at metrics and analytics? And he's asking the biggest creator in the world who, has the most subscribers, has tons of, businesses as a result. And he basically said, he's like, I don't focus on the vanity metrics. I don't focus on likes, comments, reshares, all that sort of stuff. He says, I focus on creating the best content that gets me those outcomes. So instead of focusing on, okay, how do we optimize this? How do we do, like, no, Instead, he's like, I'm just going to be 100% focused on creating the best quality content for my audience. Obviously, engagement does kind of feed into, okay, what content do they want, all that sort of stuff. But in general, it's like, if you focus on creating the best quality content, people consume good quality content across the board. And so
Right.
I think even too, when I hear from contractors or even other people in other industries saying, hey, what's the metrics numbers, I'm like, I don't know, like it's really tough to say. And when I hear stories like this from like a Mr. Beast, that is like, hey, he doesn't really know either. I'm sure he knows formulas and things like that, but in general, his goal is like, I'm just focused on creating the best quality content and then just building from there. I'm sure maybe some videos pop off more than others, and I'm sure he knows the technicalities for that. But in general, it's like, you actually don't know until you actually put it out there. Because I've had posts
Right.
myself, I'm sure you have had too, where you're like, I feel like this has legs. You post it and boo,
Oh,
it
yeah. Are you
dies.
kidding? That happens 90% of the time. That's like the majority.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, that's how it goes. And so yeah, social media is very akin to being a creative professional, in that like a lot of times you're going to put stuff out there that like maybe you like, but other people don't like it for
Yeah.
whatever reason, and you can't take things personally, even though it's easy to do that. You have to have belief in your brand, in your
Hmm.
talent, in your abilities, and as long as you do that, and as long as you're putting content out there that you like
Hmm.
and that's meaningful to you, um, that's really all you can do. And then, you know, the business hopefully will follow in the same direction.
Yeah, for sure. So for those of you listening that obviously enjoyed a lot of Liberty's charisma and energy and wittiness and even parts of her story, whether it's her journey, from theater into motherhood into business owning a business, growing the business, all sorts of stuff. I definitely recommend that you go check her out on both LinkedIn and Instagram. But with that said, is there anything else you want to plug in here, Liberty, before we end the conversation today?
Um, yeah, one more thing that I thought of. You asked me earlier, like, what are the biggest mistakes that contractors make? And I think this goes for not just construction businesses, but for any businesses. And like I said, being there on social media, and I'm sure you do this as well, but as a consumer, regardless of what it is, if it's a hair salon, if it's a restaurant, if it's I don't know, a coffee shop, whatever it is. First thing I'm going to do if they're a new business, and especially if they're in the service business, like a construction company, whether it's residential or commercial, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look them up on social media as a consumer. I'm going to look at their Instagram. I'm going to look at their Facebook. I'm going to look at their LinkedIn and see what's going on. So you have to look at it from that mindset, like, oh crap, if they look us up and we're not even there, or they look us up and our last post was 6 months ago, ugh, like you have to look at it from a consumer um, mindset. So that's just one more thing that I wanted to say. You got to be there. You got to be there, man.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And the one thing I'll build on what you just said is millennials, Gen Z and Gen Alpha are the future leaders, and they are more tech adopted, more tech forward than
Mhm.
any generation ever. It just becomes more and more. And so the norm will be social media, will be content, will be online, will be digital. And for those businesses, B2B, B2C, anything in between that don't leverage that will likely, one, not be able to get more customers, or two, not be able to get the help or workers or staff to be able to grow your business, because you need people in order to grow your business. And so that's just something to put out there. Obviously, not trying to threaten any of you guys out there, but the sooner you get there, the better it's going to be in the long haul. But with that said, thank you so much, Liberty, for coming on the pod. Like I said, I had a lot more questions. Maybe in the future we could figure out how to get maybe even a series of other agency owners and just do like a little round table and just
Hell
chop
yeah,
it
that'd
up
be
about other
awesome.
things. So, but yeah, once
I'd
again,
love
thank you
that.
so much for coming on the pod and sharing your story, your wisdom, and yeah, and also too, this is just so you guys know, this is the first time we're like seeing each other face to face. We've supported each other and seen each other digitally behind our images, but this is the first time I'm seeing Liberty. So it's great to meet you, and thanks for coming on the pod.
Absolutely. The feeling is mutual, Jonathan. This was great.